Welcome everyone to Overcome Podcast. Today, our guest is a Judo Black Belt with prior experience and background as a strength and conditioning coach at Santa Clara University in California, Olympic sports performance coach at University of Southern California, and recently world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So, welcome to the show, Arash Soofiani. I hope I got the last name right, Soofiani.
Yes, Soofiani,
Yeah.
perfect. Uma honra e prazer falar com você.
It's a huge honor, my friend.
Huge honor for me.
Yes, just like our beloved Bernardo Faria says. Arash, I was looking to your resume prior to the show just to see some of your background and heavily in strength and coach conditioning, right? So the judo came first, then the study, the dedicated study for the strength and condition. Or what came first?
Yeah, that's right. So the first thing that came was the activity, and it's kind of typical of anybody. They start in their sport or athletics, and then they desire a career in the athletics or to help other athletes come up. So I think it's the genesis of a lot of physical therapists and strength coaches. So for me, it was I wanted to make judo better. And the way to do that, I thought, was I could either be a physical therapist so I could rehabilitate hurt judoka, or I could be a strength and conditioning coach and offer my help in athletic development.
Right, but
So,
the question is, you started training judo first, right?
yes,
So you started
yeah.
judo very young.
I started when I was 14, so not too young.
Okay. And you got your black belt in judo like you were on your 18, something like that.
I was 19 years old when I got my black belt.
Why didn't you invest more time, competing internationally and things like that? Because of the studies, because you wanted to dedicate to study?
I did. I competed I would say a moderate amount. I don't. The thing that the studies didn't necessarily hold me back because I was studying at San Jose State University.
Hmm.
Uh, the reason which is because it was both a university in California that was nearby, but also they had an elite judo program. So I chose that university for that reason, so I could compete and also study and finish a degree. But mostly my injury in my knee limited my ability to compete more. So I had a major knee injury in 2013, and then I rehabilitated it. Took about a half year, and then I had another major knee injury in 2017.
Those injuries were at the mat, like training or competition or something.
So the first one was at a competition. I was at the World University Games in Kazan, Russia,
Hmm.
and I was one match away from the bronze. I was actually competing in sambo, and I just took a step and tore my ACL. My knee buckled from underneath me, and
Wow, one step. That's it.
yeah, I couldn't explain it. I was just kind of, I don't know, shaking my hands and adjusting my grip, and then I took a step with my left leg, and then I just had this
Wow, that
valgus
is
moment.
bizarre.
Yeah, it's not as bizarre when you consider my knee structure when I was a kid was mostly valgus. Just my left leg was kind of knock-kneed,
Mm.
just my left.
Like a soccer
And
player.
actually, the reverse of a soccer player.
Oh,
Like,
okay, the reverse of
yeah,
soccer.
yeah. So like a soccer player would be like
Both
bow-legged
like, yeah,
like
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
My left leg went in like
Oh,
this.
okay, yeah.
And so part of actually my second knee injury, which was the cartilage surfaces wearing down, um, I had my bones restructured. So my tibia was cut into. I had a tibial tuberosity osteotomy, and then I also had a distal femoral osteotomy, and they kind of wedged the leg so that the knee angle would be more manageable. Um, so
And that held you back a lot, right? Do you still feel anything about this, or were you able to adapt and continue to compete?
I still feel it, but I just told myself I'll have to adapt to it. So the screws still kind of bother me, and but I'm managing the pain. And the major thing though was adjusting my lifestyle and making some changes there.
After you rehab from that injury, there was any specific move that you had to avoid to do, any specific throw that you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, or I have to adapt my game to not expose myself too much?
Um, yes, initially that was my approach, but I think this was a poor approach because you know I told myself, oh, I don't want to use too many single leg balance throws like Uchimata or Haragoshi, which were my favorite techniques, and because my I felt unstable when I was balancing my body along with my opponent's body.
Yeah.
But recently, as recent as maybe a year and a half ago, I decided that no, the reason why that is a very simple math equation. I'm not putting out enough force to stabilize my knee. So I need to improve the forces of both my quadriceps, my glutes, my calves to be able to be rigid when I do support somebody on their weight. So when I made this adjustment, I was able to go back to Uchimata, and now I can play more of my old game.
And it was your supporting leg,
Yeah, my supporting leg, my left leg.
but you also had a problem on the right leg too, right?
Uh, I just had I have a string of MCL injuries on the right leg, but you know nothing that was gonna needed surgery. Just bother me here and there.
So now you can basically leverage your supporting leg to do the other throws, and it was basically a matter of mind, how you approach the strengthening of that leg. That's why I saw you doing some balance exercise the other day. That probably for this reason, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I see now. You wonder about my right knee. No, I actually recently injured my hamstring.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was one of my first major national judo tournaments back after the injury, and I was at Dallas, the Dallas Invitational, and I was doing a Uchimata Sukashi, so countering a Uchimata, and with my right hamstring, which is not as flexible as my left hamstring for whatever reason, hip imbalances or what have you. And I was getting close to successful to doing that, but my opponent was so much heavier that when my leg was at that outstretched position, and his weight was still leveraging me forward, and I just heard pop, 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 and
Ooh,
Velcro.
really? You heard pop?
Yeah, yeah. So it was like Velcro, like very loud Velcro. So that's actually
Ugh.
it's one of the worst hamstring injuries you can suffer because it's a lengthening injury. So that you have type 1, which is when the hamstring is putting out too much force and it can't handle itself, which is called type 1. And then type 2 hamstring injuries happen when the hamstring gets super long in a lengthened position, and basically like a stretching injury.
Right.
And so I suffered a type 2, both under stretch and under load.
Did you stop the match at that point, or you kept fighting?
I tried to keep going. I really tried. It was, first of all, it was excruciating. And so I have video of when I was in the middle of my counter. I just go flat. I just
Collapse.
land on my head. Yeah, I just collapsed because the pain was so great. And I immediately grabbed right underneath my butt. And I'm like, oh my God, it's my hamstring. I know it. And I try to stand up, but I could barely walk to the center of the tatami.
But at
And so
that moment, do you had any dimension of if it was torn or just strained? You had no idea, right?
no, I just felt, like I guess a soreness,
Hmm.
right? Like
And
whenever I'm
pain,
not
of course,
sore.
a lot of pain.
Yeah. I mean, you're also very well strength trained and have a history of bodybuilding. Like when are you not sore or feeling your muscles a little bit? There's always some kind of tension.
Yeah.
And so I could feel my muscles, just a natural tension in my muscles. And then before that point, and man, it just
But is it something that you can cure just with physical therapy? You don't need surgery, right?
yeah. So I've been rehabilitating it and using what's called using physical therapy. Um, I don't really need a physical therapist for this type of injury because
Yeah, you can
I have
manage.
a huge I have a huge support group and I kind of know what I'm doing and I have physical therapists in the judo community and athletic trainers that deal with this. So I just reached out and they said, yeah, you can use the Askling L. They call it the L protocol. There's like multiple stages, but
But
I'm pretty
did you do
close.
any MRI to see the damage?
Yeah, so I had to get an X-ray to see the condition of the tendon. And you would say, oh, well, X-ray can't really show you the tendon, but it can actually show you whether the hamstring tendon had pulled off any of the hip bone.
Hmm.
So where the attachment, the attachment or the insertion of that muscle, you can determine, whether it was an avulsion tear, and then in which case it needs to be like stuck back into place. Luckily, I didn't have that. And then, I didn't really see the need for an MRI to see the extent of the tear.
Hmm.
It does, at this point, it's pretty much just play by ear.
Yeah, it's that's the thing. I compete in bodybuilding for like 5 years, and this is what I always say to my BJJ professor, to sensei. Like I never hurt myself in bodybuilding. Five years competing, back to back, and as soon as I start BJJ and judo, I start breaking myself all over the place. I had a Lynch Frank injury on my foot
Oh man.
during a Tayatoshi. Then I ruptured my tricep last year. So two big surgeries in 2 years. Uh,
Jeez, Liz Frank is not fun. That's one of the worst ones.
Lynch Frank is horrible. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's wow. I do not wish this for anyone. It was the worst injury ever.
I didn't have a Liz Frank, but I did in 2020. I had a stress fracture in my fifth metatarsal, which was not as I've never had a Liz Frank, luckily, but that's kind of like the podiatrist was telling me this is like the second worst one you can get because it's on the outside of where my support is basically.
Hmm.
That also took me about a year to really feel normal. So
And was that also on the mats?
no, that was oddly enough, that was just because I took up hill sprinting, during COVID. I'm
Oh,
like,
wow.
oh, I'm a big guy, but I could sprint uphill, and then just,
Really?
yeah,
Wow. How that
yeah.
happened? I'm trying to envision how. Did you trip or something?
No, so it was a stress fracture. So as you're going uphill, the stresses go on the outside or wherever you're transmitting the forces. And so if you're going uphill and you're digging your feet into the ground, this is usually the weakest point. And so I was wearing like barefoot shoes for the first time and going up this hill. And also, like, you have to remember, I was about at this was at the start of the pandemic, so
2020, right?
2020. So I was going crazy. And I was like, I got to do something hard. And I was 295 pounds at the time. So I'm like 30 pounds lighter now. Now I could probably handle it a little better, but still, I was going every day, first thing in the morning, warm up for like 30 minutes, and then that's it. I'm gonna do 20 minutes nonstop, 20 reps of 40-yard sprint up a hill.
Wow.
So
That one you had to stop for how long after that injury?
I had about an 8-week layoff, and then it was just kind of a play it by ear kind of situation. Unfortunately, the position of the fifth metatarsal is such that some things feel really good, other things don't feel good at all. And my podiatrist kind of told me, "Hey, be smart." Which at that point I was like, "Dude, I'm hurting my foot. Okay, I really have to be smart. Like I need this thing for a long time. I can't go through the cycle of hurting my foot
Yeah.
and turn into Yao Ming."
Yeah. Yeah. It's challenging, man. Do you have any advice? I mean, you have a lot of experience with injury, of course, but now that you are more mature and you look back, there were things that you would change on your, training, recovery that you like, if I have done those things, I probably didn't have so many injuries.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing, I mean, it was kind of my come to Jesus moment, was to set smart. Have you ever heard of SMART
Yes,
goals?
smart. Yes, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of the rebirth of who I was as a person. Was what am I actually trying to achieve? What was my target? I didn't really even know what I was living for, kind of. I was just like, I just knew for the longest time I go do something hard like wrestling, judo, sambo, lift weights, breathe heavy, and then go home. And then hopefully it's going to get me to somewhere,
Yeah,
right?
no vision or purpose very established, right?
Correct. And so it was kind of insane. But then when I just told myself, listen, I have to break this chain of self-destruction, essentially. So when I started to implement SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, and then timely goals,
Yeah.
right? Um, I was able to really narrow down the thing that I wanted. And it's come a long way, but it's very clear. I First of all, I took my grand dream, which was to be Olympic champion. That was my 8-year-old self telling me that dream. I wanted to be Olympic champion, right? And so it's kind of fuzzy because the pathway to that Olympic gold isn't really clear. Um, but for me, it was first I need to address why I'm getting hurt so much. Okay, intensity is way too high. I'm not recovering enough from the stress. Why are my activities so intense? Well, mostly because I'm so heavy. So every time I move, the stresses are greater on my lower body. So I told myself, man, I just have to lose weight. My body fat is over 25% at that time. And some days it was 30. And I was like, I'm not an athlete. Athletes are not don't carry around this much fat. So I told myself, first I need to lose weight and lose body fat. And then I'll give myself permission to compete again. And then, so I set my goal of I want to get underneath 20% body fat and then reach a body weight of 270 pounds. And so at 290, that was kind of that was attainable goal, because if I just I was able to calculate the deficit and I could see how I could stair step down to that weight. And once I achieved it, I was like, okay, now I can do another 5%.
Yeah.
And so when I lost that weight, I was able to return to judo, which was my next goal. I competed at a local tournament, and I did well. I was super rusty. And then I started competing in jiu-jitsu. And I was like, oh man, this is great. My knees never hurt when I did jiu-jitsu.
Well, although you start standing and you had the huge advantage of already being a black belt in judo, so you were throwing people around for sure.
Yeah, up to a point. And then I went to the World Championship and I said, "Oh, I need to adapt my game. I need to learn something." You know. But then, so it was kind of it's a slow process, especially with when you dig yourself into a hole with body fat. Um, people forget how long it took them to get so fat.
Hmm.
It takes probably equal, if not maybe 1 to 2 years more to get down back to where you want to
Yeah, I would
be.
say more because I went through a 100 pounds transformation, and it took me 1 year to lose 100 pounds, but I was all flab. So I had to build muscle. It took me 3 years to be fully complete. So
Right.
total of 3 years
Yeah.
to not only lose fat but gain muscle. So it takes a lot of time. You need to realize that, and it is frustrating many times.
Yeah, I think 3 years was also the amount of time it took me to really get to the point where it's like, man, you get to look back and be like, whoa, that's a shit ton of progress.
Yeah.
That's an unrecognizable person. But yeah, it's like I think the mental toughness comes from not beating yourself up at the times where you're like, oh man, I'm still not there. Oh man, I'm still not there.
Hmm.
And it's like the way becomes the destination kind of proverb. It's like, yeah, the whole way you're just kind of celebrating, like, oh man, I got a little leaner. Oh man, like my life's a little
Yeah,
better.
you have to
I can,
celebrate the small wins. You cannot focus only on the final product. Every small win to me is something to celebrate.
yeah, yeah.
And you think that jiu-jitsu is less aggressive in the body when you compare like with your judo training and everything?
Have you never heard that Newaza is the old man's game and Tachiwaza is the young man's game?
I heard about that, but I mean, do you believe on that?
Um, Not totally, because when you talk about like very competitive jujitsu, which now I'm privy to with Six Blades and Shanji Hibero and Victor Hugo and all these great competitors, I'm like, no, no, no. You still need an element of athleticism to compete at the highest level. Um, I mean, you need to be the best athlete, But I think that as a daily practitioner,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of skill development, there is a lot of there's it's definitely less stressful on the body to work on half guard passing than, let's say, to train to do nagekomi for your taotoshi,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
One of them can give you a list, Frank.
yeah,
Okay, and then the other one, the worst thing can happen is your partner doesn't have a good deodorant on.
yeah. That's a great point. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And but it is also something, at least to me, and I've talked with some people about that. I feel like the learning curve in jiu-jitsu, you see progress way faster than in judo. Judo to
Right,
me is like it takes forever to make something work well. I mean, you do
right,
a lot of Fuchikomi, you do a lot of, well, you go to Randori and nothing freaking works. When you go
yeah.
to Jiu-Jitsu and you do some techniques and you go to row, you are able to make some stuff work.
That's actually a very good point. Is even as somebody who's very well practiced and has a lot of experience, sometimes if somebody wants to play anti judo with me, like there are a lot of jujitsu players that say, "Hey, let's do some stand up," and then they do kind of anti judo or things that would give you shidos, right? Like
Yeah.
hips back. Maybe they'll put the hand on the belt like this,
Stiff
um,
arm. Yeah.
stiff arming, and it's like, okay, what is the solution for this? And if you only do IJF, I call IJF approved judo, right? You won't have an answer, and you won't be able to demonstrate your techniques or do things that are spectacular. You will have to use more grappling. You will have to use more, Mongolian boch, where they literally just grabbing each other's jackets, and you'll have to tilt people, and and you'll have to adapt. And I think that's the beautiful part about my experience in jiu-jitsu was that it reconnected me with wrestling and sambo, and like, okay, there's another element. There's the legs, but there's no stalling call.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to get this guy down, and by any means necessary through your grappling experience. You even if a person is resisting, I think there is a solution. You can. Here's a good one that I get caught with sometimes is somebody will fake to pull the guard, and so it'll make me want to get ready for the guard pull, and then I'll step forward and they hit an ankle pick. It's so annoying, but it works really well.
Yeah.
And so I started training that, and I'm like, oh man, like I could actually use. I don't even have to really be a guard puller, but I could fake the guard
And
pull and go to an ankle. So, uh, you know, you just have to be soltinho. Okay, that's just the idea. You have to be flexible and be willing to adapt many different ways. I mean, the way we spell judo, the first character in kanji is yawara, which is means flexibility or giving way. And if you're a judoka that is too rigid with their ideology, no, it has to look like this. Judo has to be chest up. You have to have grips, and your sleeves can't be this long. I don't think you're a real judoka.
Well, yeah. Um, but if we look at the Japanese judo, it's just beautiful because they do exactly like that. They are very stiff, very, standing like this. It's to me, is the most beautiful judo ever. The Japanese.
I don't disagree, but even they have a cursory understanding of how to adapt a stiff opponent's.
Yes, yes.
So they have the understanding. Their default is obviously to execute perfect nagewaza, like just to the T. I mean, you posted actually the other day Soichi Hashimoto's Taiotoshi.
Oh my God, that was
And
fantastic.
he's one of my favorite judoka in terms of his like ippon judo, and
And
also
his posture,
his.
man, his posture is so like stiff, standing with chest up. It's like,
Did you see that Sode he used to hit where he would basically turn his body and do like an armbar on his opponent on his own shoulder,
it's
and they
crazy.
had to outlaw that because he was like inventing this throw. So he would take a grip on the guy's sleeve and then turn his shoulder to the sleeve to put the guy's elbow on the back of his shoulder, and it would cause like an armbar, and so the guy has to fly over. You gotta take a look at that.
Yeah. Wow. No, it's but I think going back to the original question, I think that the learning curve, I mean, if you're talking about be a good judoka for judo, IGF judo, the learning
Yeah,
curve is way harder because even talking to my coach Russ and everything, he was like, "You some judokas they basically have like two, three good throws and that's it, and they will always try to create situations to go to that throw. So although there is many ones, they are not masters in everything. They know two or three very well.
correct. And you can list off a ton of legendary judoka, and they could tell you immediately what their favorite throw is, and it's just like Kosei Inoue, Uchimata,
Yeah.
right? And then
Mariwama is also Chimara.
everybody's Uchimata, or they say Ouchigari and Uchimata, and it's like because they're one of the they do one or the same variation of that. So it's like yeah, I agree. The learning curve is definitely steeper, and you won't get the immediate satisfaction when you join,
Yes, exactly.
which
Actually, you do exactly the opposite. It's a lot of frustration because nothing works.
yeah, I think that's why it's so important. Uh, Whoever does teach a judo program to have some nagekomi, because nagekomi really does give the sense of, oh, I'm learning how to throw somebody, because it won't happen in randori.
Hmm.
Yeah, right away at least, and even at a higher level, the ippon in randori maybe will happen every 1.5 to 2 minutes. Sometimes it never even happens in the round at all.
Yeah.
And then, at the lower levels, it could happen every 15 seconds. So I think it's important for beginners to do more nagikomi and combination uchikomi and moving around and getting that sense, and then doing a lot of newaza randori to develop. Because you have the experience being a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
I'm not black belt.
You're not a black belt?
No, I'm far from that.
You're a purple
No,
belt?
I'm blue.
Oh, you're a blue
Yeah.
belt? You just started there too.
Yeah, you were blue and you turned purple, right? I was supposed to get a promotion probably last year, but again, I've been the last 2 years with 2 surgeries. I've been in and out of the mat a lot, right? So I came back last year in February. I competed in Oklahoma. I won the Open there, and I was planning to continue the trajectory, going to every single Open. But then in February, I went to a judo tournament, a local one, Lone Star, here in Dallas. And that's where I tore my triceps. It was 50% of the triceps was rupture during again another tayo. I love tayo, but it breaks me because I believe it breaks me because I'm not using pure technique. I'm using a lot of strength. So I need to improve technique so I can use less strength. I'm still using a lot of strength. I shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, and you've developed a lot of very mature and strong muscle. So putting this muscle in those bad positions because you're using bad technique, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you put them in bad positions, then they want to overuse themselves, and then they snap.
They snap. Exactly.
They're really good. They're good at their job of creating tension, but there becomes a tension, a point of no return, so to speak.
Yeah. So it's that's the journey. But again, I started very late in my life. Martial arts, right? I started at the age of 45, and that's is another question that I had to you, because I think you had a gym. You were a gym. You had a dojo in California, right?
I would call it more of a club. It was, but yes,
Yeah.
I had a club for about 3 or 4 months
Okay.
before I decided to move to Texas. Yeah.
Okay. But my point is, I'm pretty sure that you train master level people or people that started late in life.
Yeah.
And definitely starting late in life, it was easier to adapt my body to jiu-jitsu because it's less aggressive than getting slammed on the floor every week. That was not fun, right? Because I didn't know how to fall. It was adaptation to judo. When you start after 40s, it's pretty tough because the next day, man, you are all sore. Your back is sore. I mean, it's very painful.
Yeah. I currently actually I'm assistant coach at the Six Blades Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Lake Travis for Victor Hugo and Steve Hargett's academy, and we have a lot of master's level people. I mean, in my experience, with judo or jiu-jitsu, either one, the difficulty in the older population of judoka, when I say older, I say anybody over the age of 21.
Wow, well, 30.
because truly, like, judo requires a lot of pliability, both mentally and physically. It requires a baseline of flexibility and mobility to achieve those positions. And it also requires a bit of cardio. I mean, the reason being, and we talked about injury at the beginning, if you don't have the requisite endurance, muscular or cardiovascular, you will be tired quicker. And as you and I both know, tired people make the most mistakes.
Yeah.
So it's like if you cannot keep your head together to execute a technique or put your foot in the right place, or you're stumbling around, and then somebody has their hands on you, has their grips on you, man, that's a really good recipe for you're twisting an ankle, you're twisting a knee, you're getting hurt. Um, but I guess some of the things that I've learned about training with masters level uh, athletes, I guess, is that you have to you have to drop the intensity down, and you have to drop the frequency down as well at the beginning, because uh, you know you don't want to be doing too much after doing too little for too long. So you bring them in, train 2 to 3 times a week. The emphasis could be mostly on technique, um, and then the rounds afterwards. There's maybe a 1 to 2 rounds, 3 rounds maximum. And as somebody who's monitoring that training, you really want to, unless you trust the people, which you develop that trust with your students, but unless you trust the people to really go light with each other, you want to pick the partners.
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that I learned right in the beginning in both jiu-jitsu and judo, because you get a young guy full of energy that is bouncing around like a maniac. No, you can go that direction. I will
He,
train with.
he has, and I was that jerk.
What are you?
I was a 20-year-old, full of piss and vinegar. I was like, man, I'm just here to have 7 good or 10 good randoris, right now. Like, all I care about is
Throwing
throwing
people.
some.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, like, I didn't think of, Yuri, who has to go to Microsoft the next
Yeah.
day and, like, explain to his boss, like, okay, I really can't write any code with my hand because this kid threw me on my head and I had to put my hand there and not have a broken wrist. I'm sorry, I can't write code. Um, so it's like because the young guy has no sense of a older man's priority, or even a family man.
Hmm.
So, like, you have athletes who are between the age of 30 and 40 who have young children. And it's like, man, if you throw that guy and he gets hurt, now he can't take care of his kid.
Yeah.
So you really have to be diligent as a coach to choose the partners. So, okay, if I know Yuri is a really good partner with, um, uh, you know, uh, Victor had mentioned to me, there's like 3 types of students in an academy. You have the poodles, so the guy, people who are a little soft, but with time they can toughen up, but they're really intelligent,
Hmm.
right? And then you have Labradors, so people that are good with everybody, and then you have pit bulls, which I disagree with a little bit, because I have a pit bull and he's the sweetest thing in the world. But let's just say the pit bull, when he gets a hold of something, he doesn't want to let it go, and it's hard to dissuade him. Very stubborn, and he goes hard. So it's like you have to choose the Labrador to go with the poodle a little bit.
Do you
You
do
can't.
that nowadays for you?
I'm not in charge of the adults class
No, but
at
when
Lake Troy.
you are training, do you pick your partners?
When I train, I don't necessarily pick my partners, because mostly I train with in the mornings with Victor and Felipe Casio Costa, who's another young up and coming, world contender, going to be a world champion soon. But when I go with them, like I do my best. I give my best, and they give me their best as well. But I know that because they're younger guys. But when I go to, let's say, the night classes, I I elect to work a specific part of my game,
Hmm.
right? So when I do get put up with, I'll just use an example. A guy who's about 45 years old, who's getting in shape, who's a white belt. Okay, he's not going to get my 100%.
Of course.
You
Yeah.
know, but he may use his 100%. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, can we start in half guard? Can you get my head and arm, and then we'll start from there. I said, okay, great. That way we can create a little bit more of an even scenario, or maybe I'll ask him to start mounted,
Hmm.
and then I have to work my mount escape,
Hmm.
and then he will have the equal challenge, because he'll be in a position where he has to keep his level, keep maintain his position.
Did you have the same approach in judo as far as choosing your partners, or you were going wild?
No, like yeah, I want to say anything before 2014. 2014 was kind of like my, all right, I'm getting more mature with how I do judo, right? But back when I was living in LA and before I went to San Jose State, I was just like, people have a rebellious phase. Some people go get tattoos and, hang out late nights, like, and go with the band on tour, For me, it was just staying up late doing randori. Like that was it. No, I didn't have that philosophy, unfortunately. If I could turn back time, I think it would have been more productive. But that's also why I think jujitsu has been so good in my life, and uh, going into jujitsu has really caused me to analyze both my jujitsu performance, but also the periphery of jujitsu. My life and how I'm leading that going into the practice. Am I in a bad mood? Okay, I can't put that bad mood on people.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let me figure out a way to get myself together before I walk into this room because it's unfair to them. It's unfair to and it's definitely not good for me. Um, so I think jujitsu has been a really good mental and physical rehabilitation for me, and I'm very grateful for jujitsu.
And nowadays, you don't even train judo anymore at all.
I wouldn't say that because we do some judo techniques with the pros like Victor and Philippe and Shanji and Steve. We do like a lot more judo techniques and combinations and uchikomi, but no, really, I don't necessarily have like a formal judo practice here in Austin. Although starting next week, I'm gonna host a randori night at Six Blades Lake Travis. So all the judoka in the Austin area are invited for some randori on Friday nights. But no, not really.
Well, it's interesting because you are black belt in judo. I know Shandy is black belt in judo too, and actually has a really good judo, Shandy.
Yes.
I'm wondering why you guys don't open like a formal judo class, like at least twice a week to open up for the public.
Yeah, he's been in my ear about that. He'd like to do a dedicated judo
Yeah,
class.
that would be awesome, man.
Yeah, it's all about just organizing the time and fitting it in. I mean, there's a huge demand for jujitsu, so they're accommodating to that demand right now. And um, I think just in the future, as they have more people to cover for the other classes, because they do have a certain number of instructors in general, and they can't cover everything. Soon we'll grow into the judo demand as well,
And
because Austin is a judo desert for sure.
yes,
There's only one academy, Kokoro Judo, which unfortunately I've been unable to attend because they train on Tuesday and Thursday nights, which are also the nights that I teach class, the kids
so there
class,
is only
and
one academy in the entire area.
yeah,
That is insane. Wow.
yeah. And then Dallas has all the judo,
And in San
so
Antonio, right? Because Nina was in San Antonio too. She was teaching there, I think.
yes, Herbeck has his judo. Sensei Herbeck has his judo academy in San Antonio, and it's a wonderful academy, and they have really really skilled young judoka. It's incredible. They have big judo. So I went there. I visited. I went for a Friday night training, and they had a couple of teenagers, and I swear to you, I'd never seen more big throwing techniques. It was very cool to see, especially from the younger judoka.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should definitely open. I think that one of the most beautiful jiu-jitsu matches that I've seen where judo was used a lot was between Shandy and Rodolfo Vieira, which is
Uh-huh.
also a judoka. His background is in judo. And it was
Yeah.
awesome, man, because those two guys were throwing each other all the time, and they were defending. Rodolfo was using a lot of drops, He likes to do a
Yeah.
lot of drop, which is something that I admire a lot when I see big guys doing, because it's kind of difficult for a big guy to do drop sail, for example.
Yeah,
I've
maybe,
seen you
yes.
doing, I've seen Giza doing, and I was like, wow, this big guy doing drop is interesting, you know?
I mean, big is relative because when I started competing in IJF like Grand Prix and Continental Cups, I quickly realized I was not so big. 6'3", 140 kilos was average.
Well, but you were like in a super heavy division, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that was an average size, and getting under these bodies. I mean, some of these guys are 6'5", 6'6". Uh,
But
you know,
not so much about getting under, more about the impact. Because when you're doing a drop,
yeah,
there is this twist, and then you boom land on your knees, right? So, mainly for you that you
yeah.
have knee problem, don't you think it's a bit aggressive on your knees?
No, so like a really good drop is not actually like a hard impact. It's actually the most impactful is when your knees are bent here and they do this rebound off of your calves. So a very good drop is actually
Smooth.
it's akin to the snatch in weightlifting. It's like how do you push yourself underneath this person super quick? Um, I never really feel a hard impact on my knees when I do a drop. I mostly feel a hard like strain on the joint itself when it's rebending back up.
Okay,
So
interesting.
so yeah, yeah, I wouldn't. I don't think that a drop seonagi is necessarily throwing yourself onto your knees as fast as you can, as much as it's getting yourself underneath somebody as fast as you can. It's hard to explain until I'll show
And
you.
this one is also hard to perfection because you don't even have some that much of uchikomi to do it, or more traditional uchikomi for drop. We don't do that a lot.
Actually, the way that I did it and the way I developed my drop seonagi was when I was in high school. I was the only. I was one of like 10 guys that wanted to train in the summertime, and 8 of them were under 150 pounds, and then one of them was 185 pounds, and unfortunately he had to go with me. And when I was in high school, I was around like 250, 260. So I didn't get to like throw him around, but my coach had a supplé dummy, and so I would put the gi on him on the dummy, and I did hundreds and hundreds of seonage, of drop seonage, of sumigaeshi, of any kind of tech ogoshi. I did hundreds of reps, and it really did help because you develop the timing because the necessary kozushi to get underneath the drop seonage is really just to lift the arms up and get underneath. So a throwing dummy is actually very valuable for training drop seonage if you want to do that nagekomi.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, no, it's everything about reps, reps,
yeah.
and drilling and practicing. Do you train every day nowadays?
Nowadays, yeah, it's more like do I train once or do I train twice? Some days it's 3 times a day. Uh, it's weird. Some days I crave the cardio at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like I'll and you know about cardio because bodybuilding, but also recently, just zone 2 cardio has been the most impactful part of my athletic
I
journey.
love hit. I love hit cardio.
You like hit?
Yes, I absolutely love it. I think to me, hit is one of the most effective way to lose body fat. We
Right.
do hit so much. I have a gym on my garage, and I've been doing hit a lot. And sometimes I
You have
like
a
to
nice.
finish with the hit. After I finish training, then that final nail in the coffin is hit.
You're a really you're a you're a man psycho. You know what I mean? A real man's man psychopath. Um, For me, the judo or jujitsu is hit enough. That's enough of the hit stimulus for me, like a good couple of rounds. But actually, the hit training, it's classified as a different type of cardiac hypertrophy.
Hmm.
So you have two principal cardiovascular adaptations when you train cardio, right? Or you do any kind of cardiac output training. You have concentric hypertrophy, which is what would be associated with hit training or wrestling or strength training. So this is kind of like, oh, I get my cardiovascular training in because I do an intense 40-minute uh, workout, or I do a hard judo session. Like these are all forms of cardiovascular training. Um, you would be right, but the adaptation is not the same. So in concentric hypertrophy, the walls of the heart actually get thicker and bigger,
Hmm.
right? To deal with the higher output of the heart. So because your heart is beating so fast, it doesn't even have time to fill all the way. So what it does is it grows to be able to squeeze harder. Whereas when you do long distance, what you call like road work,
Hmm.
like a boxer going on the road and taking a jog, or somebody on the jump rope, or stairmaster, or bike, and you exercise for 30 to 60 minutes, or even 90 minutes, right? And your heart rate's somewhere between 120 to 150 beats per minute. You're actually doing eccentric cardiac muscle hypertrophy. So think of like a water balloon filling up with water, and then now when that balloon gets emptied and fills up again, it stretches a little bit more.
Hmm.
Active, like steady state cardio, is it stretches the balloon or the left ventricle of your heart so that it's able to take in more blood with each pump. So it's important to train both of those adaptations, both increasing the heart size and strength and thickness of the walls, but also training the left ventricle to be able to stretch and increase the stroke volume. And that you only really get with long distance cardio. You get that with the boring stuff, putting on a podcast and doing cardio that you can keep a conversation, but maybe not that long,
Hmm.
like 20 to 150.
Yeah.
That has that has helped me so much in recent months in
Now,
terms of my.
interesting you mentioned that because one of the challenge that I have, and not only me, but a lot of people have, and that's why they always ask this question. A lot of people say, "Well, I'm gonna do hit. I'm gonna improve my cardio with hit so that I can get better in my
Mhm.
jujitsu role." But I think and I feel like the gas and the cardio in a jujitsu role, there is absolutely nothing that can simulate that. Because, for example, I can do hit for 40 minutes if I want, and I will finish and I'll be okay. But if I do like 3 rows in a row, I'm dead. I'm literally dead.
Yeah,
And my heart beat will be up in the sky, and I will be tired. I think it's so odd that I can perform my cardio in any other circumstance, but my jiu-jitsu card still sucks.
yeah. And unfortunately, it's because we're inefficient when we get tired. Like in jujitsu, the more efficient you get at your techniques, actually, the less energy you expend. Hodger Gracie has a new shirt that he's selling. It says "Jiu-Jitsu is easy,"
Yeah, I saw that.
and he's right. It's like you've gone with people who effortlessly sweep you,
Yeah.
who hold you in mount. I mean, the first time I went with Shunji, that's what it felt like. It felt like this guy wasn't doing anything, and he just swept me and mounted me, and then put a cross collar choke on me, and I was sweating, not him. The trouble with that is that now, if you're that efficient, the cardiovascular training that you would normally seek out in jujitsu doesn't happen anymore because you're so good at it. So now you actually have to seek out the other forms of cardiovascular training so that you
So
can.
what you're telling me is, as you get better on the technique and you are able to control your breathe and you are able to, be more aware of the movements, your cardio automatically gets better.
Yeah, I mean, you expend less energy, and so you think that your cardio is getting better, but really your technique is getting more proficient. So you don't use as much energy. You don't. You're getting out of your own way, because sometimes the problem is we create our own resistance by being in bad positions, and then we have to use a ton of energy to get back out of the bad position into the neutral position. Whereas if you're constantly advancing and going into a good, better and better position, you're actually using the least amount of energy possible to achieve that. So by default, if you get better, you have to do cardio. If you're not as good, I mean, just do more technical training, and then you'll notice you use less energy against less skilled opponents and use more energy against more skilled opponents.
Yeah. Did you have a hard time adapting to the BJJ approach, or you were a big Newaza guy in the past?
Um, I would definitely say it wasn't easy, but I did a lot of Newaza with San Jose State, and also I was big into wrestling when I was in high school, and even the first year of college, I tried to walk onto the Arizona State wrestling team, and that didn't work out for me. So I came back home and started judo. But like scrambling and working on the floor was not foreign to me,
Mm-hmm.
so I had a lot of energy for that.
Yeah.
But but the main difference I think has to be the pace of the Newaza and judo is completely different from the pace of Newaza and jiu-jitsu.
This is way faster.
It's way faster, and also you don't have time to develop pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So in jiu-jitsu, you have time to cook your opponent, develop pressure,
You can
open up
stall
opportunity.
a lot.
I mean, if my deltoid is in your mouth like
Yeah.
this, and I'm just smashing you like this, all of a sudden your arm starts to free up, and I'm like, okay, Americana time.
Yeah.
Like there are some opportunities that you don't get in judo. And to be quite frank, if we're talking about what's the superior martial art, is it the martial art that has a referee that tells you to stand up after 5 seconds, or the martial art which really demonstrates who's in the most control? I think a marriage between those two needs to happen for sure.
Absolutely. And one thing that I think it was Flavio Canto, he said
Mm.
on the last when he was covering the last Olympics, he said something that I totally agree. He was like, no, any we shouldn't have Brazilian judokas losing on the ground in the Olympics because
Mm.
they should be doing cross training with jiu-jitsu. They should be doing cross training all the time to get better in jiu-jitsu.
Mhm.
And he is right, man. I mean, when you see judokas, Brazilian judokas struggling on the ground, I'm like, why are you not training jiu-jitsu? Yeah,
You're literally in the best possible environment to learn about
yeah,
Newaza. I mean, Flavio Cantu, world famous judoka, but also uh, has a vicious ground game. I mean, he has a
yeah.
he has a choke name after himself. So, but I can't agree more. I mean, he in another regard, I don't think any judoka should be losing on the ground to begin with a jiu-jitsu player. I think they should be seeking that mastery as well. I think maybe jiu-jitsu should have a higher. I don't think it should be as far away.
Like it is today, yeah, like it is. But one thing that you saw this gap really shrinking was on the last Olympic, the female Japanese team. They did a
Yeah,
boot camp in jiu-jitsu and they were training jiu-jitsu a lot. And you saw a lot of ippons on the ground.
yeah. Do you know Marty Malloy?
Yes.
Okay, she has a great match with Matsumoto, and back in 2015, I believe, at the Worlds, Matsumoto is a vicious Newaza specialist,
Yes.
and Marty actually hits a foot sweep on her, and she has a grip on her elbow, Matsumoto's elbow, that's like a pinch grip, like this, and she uses that pinch grip to turn over into a perfect Jujikatami and then submits her within like 20 seconds.
Wow.
And it was one of my favorite arm bars. And she happens to be my teammate. You know, I'm very proud of her. And I love her. But I'm just saying like that should be also what jujiteros they they aspire to, as well as judokas. They should be looking to the newaza as a in their mastery of their craft as much as they look at scoring ippon.
I agree. I agree. My friend Arash, it was absolutely fantastic conversation. We could go all day long here because we have so many things to talk about. You are an encyclopedia of everything, so I really appreciate your time and. Maybe one day when I'm fully recovered, we can train again. I know that you were at East Side recently, but I just came back to train judo this week after 12 weeks of surgery. Not even full 12 weeks yet of surgery. So I just went for Ujikomis and technique. Today I went there again. I didn't run Dory because the doctor said, well, only 16 weeks, so you can spar. So I'm taking my time to come back and make this year a good year.
Man, I'm really appreciate you inviting me on this podcast. I listened to a lot of your episodes and you had some really cool guests on, and so to be in that class of guests is a true honor. And yeah, I do look forward to sweating on you. I'm a big sweater, and you know, maybe I have a nice barbecue here. We can come here and make some churrasco,
Yes,
make you
absolutely.
some Persian kebab,
Yeah, my
and
daughter lives in Austin, so we'll definitely have to meet one day there for sure.
yes, of course. You're more than welcome anytime, my brother.
All right, brother. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. All right.
Valeu, valeu.
Valeu, irmão. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. Another great episode today. Make sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and see you again next time.